Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. We do have a slight majority, so we're able to go ahead. Need a resolution to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Bill, seconded by Evelyn. Any changes, errors? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, Human Resources. This is, first item is your request to terminate the EAP contract.
Yes, I put a memo in your package regarding the Employee Assistance Program contract that we currently have. Utilization is quite low, so I might have to go out and do another RFP.
Okay.
Gretchen, can you pull the mic over towards you?
Yes. Is that better?
That's better, yeah, thank you. Okay, anyone like to move that? Bill? Seconded by Mr. Sokol.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Logic, Gretchen?
Okay. Well, the next request that I have is for the final extension of employment for the temporary human resource and civil services.
Wait a minute. No, I said, is there any logic on the first one?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that part. I thought you went to go to the next one. The logic is that we have had very poor utilization of our EAP program. An employee assistance program is a really important benefit that we provide our employees, and it provides lots of different sources of counseling. If employees have any kinds of personal problems, financial problems, they can go to a EAP for guidance and support. The current EAP that we have is what I call a 1-800 EAP. The organization is based in Texas, and so anytime somebody calls in for a referral, what they do is they use their referral network in order to dispatch someone to a local provider. That Texas provider actually engages in contracts with local providers of all sorts. What I would like to do is look at a more regional EAP so that we would have somebody who's familiar with systems, programs, and resources within our area, and, you know, at a moment's notice can provide us with action that we need when we have employee situations.
Okay. Okay, we've got a resolution and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next.
Thank you. The next item is the final extension request for the employment of our temporary human resource and civil service assistant. This person's been enrolled, actually started with us as an intern and spent 4 months in process, learning some of our systems and processes. After she graduated, she came to work with us on a temporary basis. The reason I'm here this month instead of next month, her current 3-month extension expires on November 20th, and the Board of Supervisors meeting will be after that fact in November. So I'm here today to ask for the extension that will be from November 20th to December 31st. I have asked for this position to become full-time regular in the next budget cycle, and so I'd be happy to answer any questions. Also, in my presentation last month, I did provide a slide of the duties and responsibilities that that position is fulfilling right now. There is a job description that was attached in your package.
Okay. Moved by Bill. Second. Matt? Any discussion? Paul?
Mr. Chairman, could we hear from Trish, the personnel officer on this position?
Civil Service has confirmed that it's acceptable to extend this position through the end of the year. There's traditionally in this county we haven't extended beyond 6 months, but because of the unusual situation and the fact that it's in the budget potentially for approval, we've confirmed that. The position, as I understand it right now, when talking to the administrator, is that 50% of the position would go directly to civil service time. Right now, the person in the position, Shauna, has been learning the nuts and bolts of test administration. We have a circumstance where our longtime personnel tech will be retiring, could be retiring sometime over the next few years. Having 50% of this time to get another person up to speed, as many of you know, this is a very technical area. Having somebody who can handle all of these administrative functions knowledgeably would be very valuable. So I would be in favor of the extra assistance defined as 50% to
Trish, do you have an immediate need for the position through the end of the year?
Absolutely. Right now, what we have is, as we've described, a circumstance where we have many processes that we need to catch up on, and a lot of it is very paperwork oriented. And by having this extra 50%, and the person in the position right now is just at the point where she's starting to become to work a little bit independently, we can free up our personnel tech, we've talked about this, to do a lot of the backlog paperwork. So when I'm back in front of you in a few months, we're able to have progress as to that process. It's a twofold process. One is cleaning up all the past paperwork, getting up to speed, getting our protocols up to speed, getting in best practices, and finally, if we have someone retiring, being able to take all the steps we want to go towards automation, et cetera.
Okay, any other discussion or questions? Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
But would you let the record show that I abstained?
Okay.
Chairman, but I'm sorry.
Okay, Gretchen, review the tracking the salary implications.
In your package is just the monthly update of our tracking regarding the notice of intent to fill. The reason for this particular spreadsheet was just to show the committee exactly how much we're spending when a committee, during our committee meetings, when a department head asks to fill a position. Usually it's due to retirements or some kind of a turnover, and so oftentimes they will ask for that position to be filled at a base salary, and there has been some discussion about what happens when there's a difference between a base salary and somebody who's coming in, who's experienced within the county, and then comes in at a higher step. And so this spreadsheet just identifies the difference between what a department head asked to fill a position at, what it was filled at, and the difference between the two. And you can see, if you look, I added in the right-hand line, encumbered versus hired, so that you would have another identifier of exactly how much savings with the turnover of a position. And based on the data that's provided here from July, we've had an $80,000 savings as a result of some of the turnover that has occurred in the enterprise.
Be nice, I think if you had one more line on that, and you had a year-to-date total on that incumbent versus hired.
Okay. I did ask that last month, and no one gave me any feedback that they would like that. We could actually go back and do this from January if you would like.
Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Criminal Justice, 2A, request to amend the table of organization to reduce the hours of a part-time investigator, number 2 position, from 32 hours a week, not to exceed 8 hours per week. And along with that, I think probably it would be good to do B.
Yep, I'd be fine.
Request to amend the table of organization to create and fill a new position of part-time investigator 4, annual base salary of $20,642, not to exceed 20 hours per week, effective October 20th. Someone wants to move that? Evelyn, seconded by Matt. I don't see anyone from Criminal Justice here, but it was pretty much discussed yesterday at Criminal Justice meeting. Any discussion on this? Other questions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item number 3, referral from Social Services. Department of Social Services request to amend the table of organization to transfer several social welfare examiner and intake clerk positions between department and social services departments. Moved by Evelyn, second by Matt. Any discussion?
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Number 4, request items to be discussed by the county administrator. First one is a review of the health insurance coverage and rates. This is fun, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Warren County, as you know, provides health insurance to all of its employees and retirees. We have one principal plan, the Blue Shield plan, and then we also have a couple of options on the Medicare Advantage plans, which are for retirees that are over 65 years of age. And each year, we review with our broker the health insurance how it's progressing, what the future projections are on rates, et cetera. As you know from last year and earlier conversations we had earlier this year, we were projecting 10% increases in our budgets as well as our overall plans. In recent years, we've had those kind of increases. But what's been happening over the past several years is that Warren County, working with Capital Financial, has actually been undergoing a number of changes in our plans and policies, which have in turn helped to reduce our cost, and therefore cost to our employees, I might also emphasize, and retirees. And so this year, many of the things that we've been doing over the past few years are really starting to come back to benefit us. And so I'm quite pleased with what we kind of talked about a little bit yesterday during the budget meeting, and that is that instead of projections that we had of 10% for the next several years, and instead of the 10% or better that we've seen in the past, we are now looking at being able to project 4% this year, 6% in future years, with a stable funding of our insurance stream. Now, having said all of that, there's some details that I think you should know. There's also some changes in the Medicare Advantage plans that we would like to discuss with the committee today, because in order to keep these types of low increases and enjoy the advantages we've had of maintaining coverage, by the way, too, we're not decreasing coverage, but we are maintaining coverage, we constantly have to work towards modifying the plans. And I have to give credit to John Weber and his team. Christy Laurie's here, I think, I saw someplace. Who else am I missing? Oh, Chris is here. Sorry. And what I would ask, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, if they could take to the end of the table and then, whoever is speaking, use the microphone so that they can make the presentation, because I do think that they have a nice story to tell here, and they can give far better than I the details.
Okay. John?
We'll kind of stand here at the table. I'm going to just do a quick introduction, tell you where we're headed, what we're trying to do here, and then I'll turn it over to Chrissy. But I must tell you at this point that she's 3.5 months pregnant, so if she leaves quickly, I will take over. We'll take it
9 a.m.'s tough for me still.
We're going to be handing out now these little brochures, and we wish that you would just follow along with us as we go. We've been working with the county many years now, and fortunately we're in a position now where we finally got what we call, we're minimum premium with an ASO drug. What does that mean? Well, that means that we have stop losses to protect the county budget, so we can never go over the county budget, but we also pay only our own claims. And what we mean by that is if we budgeted, I'm just going to use round numbers, if we budgeted, say, $10,000, but our claims only come in at 8, then we get to keep the $2,000. It's not like on your small groups that you have where your premium is that much each month, you pay it, that's it. We pay an administrative charge, and then we pay for our claims as they come in weekly, which allows us to keep the money in the hopper until we need to use it, but never to exceed the maximum that we project for budget that we have here. We also went ASO on the drug because Capital was never able to negotiate a rather large discount in our drug costs and an increase in our rebates that we get back from the drug companies, which is probably going to save us estimates of about $188,000 in our drug card this year. This drug card, because of the size of the book of business that we have with Blue Shield, we were able to negotiate this because of the trust and the other groups that have it. So we're able to have this, Capital is able to have this drug card discounts because of our size, which is normal for this kind of situations where if you didn't have any business with a company, they're sure not going to give you everything to, lower the price. But as Paul, I'm going to kick off with what Paul said a little bit. Our whole objective for the long, and Paul's very good at stretching out to see how things are going to run. In my opinion is anything after 2 months could be anything in the healthcare field. So But we're working with them, we're able to lower that rate this year because of what we have here, that Chrissy's gonna show. And just to give you, because, Paul did mention 4%, if we didn't have the new healthcare, Obamacare that we have, that costs us 5%. So without that, we would have been at -1 on our renewal, but it's there, we do it, but that's just to give you an idea that 5% of this renewal is taxes to the government only. So it has nothing to do with us, it's what goes in and goes to the government to pay for Obamacare. There's still, and this is gonna go on, by the way, and our job is to make sure that this county is in compliance with all the rule changes, and I know you probably read them in the small towns and stuff, you talked about it. They're different in the small towns than they are in the large towns, and we gotta be very sensitive to the changes, as Paul mentioned. We have union contracts that force us to keep this coverage in force. So our job is to RFP every company that we have and try to get the lowest price we possibly can. We do that every year, no matter what. Even this year with the renewal low, we still RFP'd and we're not able to get anything close enough to say to us, okay, let's consider that at this point. But we, as Christie mentions as we go through, the Medicare Advantage plans is difficult this year because the government-funded CMS took away 20% of the amount of money that they gave last year to Medicare to have these rates about half of what we pay under the Medicare. So all the companies had to adjust their rates because they got 20% less revenue from the government. So we have to take that into consideration, but we do have some solutions to that. And why don't I turn it over to Christie now, let's go over the books.
Hello. Can you hear me okay? I'm going to start off basically with on page 1. Just kind of go over a summary of where Warren County is at. Just going to kind of do some overview just so everyone knows how many people are enrolled currently on the insurance and things such as that. So for starters, on page 1, I'm just going to briefly just kind of go over a few things and speed right through to what we really need to discuss today. You currently have 631 active employees on the health insurance through Warren County. There's 533 retirees on the Warren County insurance, and there are 22 survivors on the insurance currently. Also have 595 active employees on the dental insurance. In addition, of the eligible employees at Warren County, over 80% are taking your insurance. So just a little bit of information with that. These next couple pages are just, Capital Financial actually has a database in our office to keep track of all of your employees and their health insurance needs. Keep track of, obviously for billing, we do retiree coupons, etc. So this is kind of just a little summary of what our database does carry. Obviously it does come in handy, especially with Paul for union negotiations and things like that, to get to feel where everybody is at all times. Page 2 is going to cover it by, this is when the unions come into play, and it's going to be by type of coverage, and type of coverage in the way of whether they're on individual coverage, two-person coverage, family coverage. The unions, just for reference, the A stands for the Alliance Union, the C is for the CSEA Union, the N is for non-union employees, and the P is for the PBA Union. Okay? This is just informational more for the sake of letting you know where everybody is, what kind of plan type they have by union code and also by the plan that they're on. I'm going to skip ahead to page 3. Like I said, I'm going to kind of briefly go through these first few pages here. Page 3 is going to just show the plan types. Where it says Blue Shield, it's missing the D, it's just the way the system does it. Blue Shield, that's the Medicare plan that we currently have in there. So it tells you how many count by each union. The Blue Shield EPO is the active employee plan, and those that are under the age of 65. And CDMED is the CDPHP Medicare plan, so just so you know what that stands for. I'm going to bypass page 4. It's certainly for your reference more than anything. You'll have your packet to look at afterwards. And I want to skip right over to page 5 to go over the overall summary of Warren County, where you were this year, where we're headed, etc. And then we can get right into the budget numbers. As of September of 2014, there were 17 more technically on the plan count. So as far as a total enrollment, you'll see an increase of 17. But there's actually 3 less active employees this year. The 17 are just because once they go on Medicare, and it was a husband-spouse coverage, which would be counted as a 1 contract, once they become Medicare eligible, it counts as 2 contracts. So just to have an understanding that even though enrollment appears higher this year, it actually is not. So High-cost claimants, explain we did have a great year at Warren County. High-cost claimants in 2013-14, we had 3 that were over 100,000 compared to last year of 5. So we've had a very good year with the high-cost claimants. And those would be obviously any claimants that exceeded $100,000 in claims. ASO summary, that is a self-insured drug that we were discussing earlier. The self-insured drug, which went into effect last year, has been very successful for Warren County. As we discussed, with the new discounts that Capital was able to bring to the table, we had a phenomenal year this year, and we are expecting even a better year next year. We have negotiated even better discounts, and that's going to account for between $160,000 and $180,000 if we were to have the exact same fills this year as we are, if we were going to have it next year as we did for this year. So with that in mind, that gives you a concept that is a pretty significant savings with no changes to the fills. Obviously, there's always going to be some change. AWP, that's the average wholesale price. So if you were to go to a pharmacy and pick up a prescription, that would be what you would have to pay for the cost of the drug. A trend for all of the drugs that Warren County filled was an 8.3% increase in the average wholesale price. Warren ran at a 2.86% increase in the self-insured drug, so that's phenomenal. So you guys ran well below the actual price of what the drug cost this year. So that has definitely been beneficial for Warren County. Concerns that we have for the future with the drug, now that we're self-insured. There's a huge increase, and it's across the nation, on specialty drugs. So that's something that we have to absolutely factor in. One of our large PBMs had just gone to Memphis for a conference on this, and their comment is in 2020 they're anticipating, like right now, for example, your total drug cost, which would be about, your specialty drugs account for about 20% of your total drug costs, the people that are on these high-cost drugs. They're expecting by 2020 to account for 50% of your drug costs. So that's something we definitely have to factor in. And the fact that we're self-insuring this drug card now, we definitely always have to have a reserve to protect ourselves, because you absolutely have no idea when those big drugs are going to pop up. I've had a few other groups. Warren County was not one of them, but I have had a few groups that had a few really high-cost multiple sclerosis, hepatitis C drugs that popped up this year. They could be as much as $22,000 per fill. Okay, they can't exceed up to 100, but I have seen in this area over 22,000 are getting prescribed by local physicians. So we have to be careful and make sure that we have plenty of reserves in our account since we are self-insuring it. Terminal liability with Blue Shield. This is another part which is kind of tying into when we discuss reserves and money that we have to basically protect ourselves with. The terminal liability is the amount of money that we would have to pay our current vendor, which is Blue Shield in Northeastern New York, if we were to leave them next year, this year, etc. What that basically means is we have $1,025,057 that we would have to be able to supply to the provider to pay out those runoff claims. Okay, which makes sense. If you were to leave Blue Shield for January 1st, those next 3 months, doctors are always delayed on billing. So what's going to happen is that money is going to be set aside to pay the claims that are going to happen that haven't been processed yet. So we always have to have that as a factor for reserves, and we also have to factor in our self-insured drug reserves. And both of these have been taken into account when factoring this renewal this year. Claims history, we do run towards our maximum. Minimum premium is the way that our arrangement is currently. We have to make sure that we budget for the maximum each year, which is why we can have a really great year. And even though we're not totally self-insured on the medical piece, we do pay our claims with an administrative fee. So obviously we have to budget assuming the worst case scenario, but if our claims do come in positive, we do have some excess, which is a great way to run our plan. With that in mind, this year, to give you an idea how claims have run, as of August 1st, we are running $1.247 million under the anticipated maximum liability that the actuaries of Blue Shield assessed for us. But with that in mind, 2012 to 13, we only ran $551,000 under, and then 2011-12, we only ran $14,000 under. And that is why we always have to run towards the maximum, because you never know what kind of year you're going to have. 2 years ago, we actually came to this committee to put a wellness program in. I certainly feel that that has assisted with the claims this year. It's always hard to really assess a return on investment with a wellness program, but I definitely think the support of Warren County and all the committees has definitely helped. The top 3 clinical drivers when we ran a report for the 2-year period from September 2012 to September 2014, The top 3 clinical drivers that we were concerned about then has declined dramatically. Chronic illness demographics. That's telling them, Blue Shield has a report that states how many Warren County employees have a chronic illness. That declined 13% in 2 years. So that's really great. There's been a lot. The wellness team has put on a lot of benefit fairs, lunch and learns, surveys, just various programs. The participation of the Warren County employees has been phenomenal. Right from the time it was rolled out, filling out a survey, et cetera, you've had a lot of Warren County employees supporting that wellness program, attending it on their own time. So I would definitely say that's something in the future that you want to continue to promote and support. The Medicare Advantage, this is a concern today, okay, so I want to bring attention to this. This is across the board. The increases to the Medicare Advantage plan ranged between anywhere between about a 35 to 100% increase we saw among all the groups within this region, et cetera, within New York State. As stated previously, the reason for that is because the reimbursement that they were receiving, these the Medicare providers, have diminished. Also, the cost that I had mentioned earlier of the high-cost drugs, that has also hit the Medicare market significantly. A lot of those high-cost drug users are those Medicare eligibles. So with that in mind, that's something that we definitely, I have a spreadsheet we'll be showing shortly, and giving us the options of what type of plan we could change to kind of to be able to keep our budget where we want it to be, and also plan for the future, because I do believe that the company we're currently with is going to continue to have these kind of increases. There's going to be no way around that. COBRA, briefly to say, we took that over at Capitol fully last year. It's been very successful. Transition went well, and we have 29 people currently on COBRA. The dental renewal, that was 0%. We negotiated a 0% fixed rate for 2 years last year. So even though the renewal for the dental is 0, we have to assess the healthcare reform taxes that were delayed last year. They have to apply to this year's renewal. So I will discuss that. There's a slight increase with the dental, but the reality is it was a 2-year fixed rate. It's just strictly healthcare reform taxes added on. As stated by John, we have done the full RFP for all of the carriers. And based on all of the reviews that we've done, we're going to skip right on to page 6. And as stated earlier, Blue Shield for the active employees is certainly still the best fit for Warren County. The renewal, none of the other ones were competitive enough, especially factoring in having to pay a terminal liability. So on the top of page 6, you're going to see where I have, right in the top, it's going to say 2013-14 budget was $11,866,689. Now this is going to be considered county budget after factoring in the employee share. The 2014-15, based on estimated MA, since we did not know which plan we were going to be going with, would be $12,284,044, which is a 3.5% overall renewal for Warren County. This does include the healthcare reform taxes of over $368,000 built in already. The reason I'm kind of showing it in such a way is just to kind of get a feel for each of the counts. So you'll see this first page on page 6, it just references the CSEA. There's 628 members within that. I'm going to kind of skip through here a little bit. Page 7 is going to be the Alliance with 140 currently on it. Page 8 is going to be the non-union with 231. Page 9 is the PBA with 113. And page 10 is for all of the new hires within all the unions except the PBA. And that would just be because they had a different cost share. So with this 3.5% renewal that we're stating with Blue Shield and estimating with the Medicare product, with having to make probably some changes to get to that point. The whole goal is to level out the renewals each year for Warren County. As Paul had stated before, we had an average and assumed about a 10% across the board. Based on the way that our claims came in this year, the self-insured drug situation, but also to protect ourselves, we can comfortably say that moving forward, by taking a 3.5%, which is actually a 4% increase on the actual rate itself, that's going to put us in a comfortable position to be able to budget at lower amounts. Potentially, we're hoping to be at about a 6% rolling forward in the next few years. which is definitely putting us in a great position, especially with the health insurance market, and I'm sure everybody has been reading the increases that can be astronomical. Double digits is pretty much more common than single at this point, and so to be able to kind of have a 4 or 5 year plan and try to roll out under double digits is a great position for us to be in. So on page 11, to break it all down, I've shown the 2013-14 current rates by full cost, county cost, and employee cost, and then the 2014-15 rates based on the union and the same situation. And like I said before, it's based on a 4% increase in the actual full cost of the rate, but that would account for about a 3.5% increase on the budget for the county standpoint. Moving on to page 12. And this is the biggest concern that we have this year. We're very comfortable in saying we have the best plan that we can for the best price with the Blue Shield Actives, but the Medicare people, another story. We currently have, and you'll see on page 12, the columns. The first column says CDPHP. That is one of the current Medicare products that are offered to our retirees that are over the age of 65. Okay? The second column is going to show the Blue Shield Medicare PPO. That is the Blue Shield plan that we also offer to our Medicare over 65. We have an in-area and an out-of-area plan for that. So for those who live out of New York State, they're on the out-of-area plan. So there's actually 3 plans in, but all the locals will only have 2 options, okay? And all the people who live out of state have 1 option. Now, if you skip to page 13, next page, you're going to see why we're concerned. The 2014 rate was $285 for the Blue Shield plan, and in 2015 it went up 39.7% to $398.22. Now, certainly it's not an equal hit on the budget because we have a smaller percentage of people on those plans, but the reality is either way, we certainly do not need to take a hit that hard this year for our budget. So what we have shown is we went out to all the different Medicare providers to try to meet 2 needs. Number 1, to offer a plan that's as equal as we can to our current plan, and also to find a plan that's going to be able to be offered to the out-of-area people. And that's the tough thing to find, is to find a plan that's good for out-of-area Medicare eligibles. The Empire Blue Cross plan, I've showed you 2 options. All right, the one that I would recommend would be the first one, which is costing $291.08. What this is, you'll see in blue where the benefits are better, in red where the benefits are lesser. But as you can see as a whole, you're never going to be able to match a plan identical. So certainly where you see the benefits, there's a good amount of, the blue tends to be a little bit better than the issues we have with the lesser benefit. Empire offers this rate to both in and out of area. And so every single retiree who's over 65, who's in or out of area who chooses this plan would be on the same plan at the same rate. So even though it costs a little bit more than last year's budget, which I think about a 2% increase off last year's Blue Shield rate, it's significantly lower than what Blue Shield was charging us for the out of area. So in the end, it can almost be like a wash on almost a 0% increase with that. I have shown the benefits broken down so you can kind of see the red and the blue stick right out. I certainly would recommend for a budget standpoint, and we've put this plan in other groups. For over 2 years, we've had it in town of Queensbury, and it has been a very successful plan. I've had no concerns, so certainly it's not a new plan that's just come out. The only reason we didn't really offer it last year as much as a concern, the rate wasn't good last year, and last year they required us to have it as the only offering, which would have been a union concern, since I'm pretty sure, Paul, in the union contract, I think we had to offer 2 plans, or we were a little concerned about that.
Right.
So with this, we did get authorization from Empire this year to offer to Warren County, this is a slice business, which means we could offer this Empire plan to both in and out of area, and also offer CDPHP. So it puts us in a much better position.
And on the side to that, just to let you know, where you see the co-pays are 10.25 under the Empire plan, I just want to let you know that your active union negotiated contracts are 25.40.
Mm-hmm.
So this is even a lot better than what the active is doing right now.
And the out-of-area plan, which is like on the bottom of the page 13, it shows that the out-of-area plan went from $324 to $445.38, which I do not believe a lot of these people who live out of state can afford $445 a month, these Medicare people. So that would be, their rate would go from $445, which would have to be this year, down to $291, so they'd be in a much better position. The concern, though, is Empire does need to roll this out by October 15th. What it means is that we'd have to have approval from Warren County and have a contract signed. Not the individuals, we'd be able to do them in November, but we would have to have by October 15th a contract signed that you guys are going to move to this Empire plan. So that's kind of why it's very time sensitive to make this change. It's just the requirement of how they file this product.
That's part of, the changes that are occurring in the healthcare field. They give us the rate on October 1st, we go out to bids right after that, and then we're at this meeting right now with the rates. So, and then they all of a sudden say, well, if you're gonna switch, you gotta have contracts signed by October 15th for the Medicare. So it kinda just obliterated all the time lags that we would have. So we did get the quotes, because everybody did have them out, but unfortunately, they're requiring us to make a decision by October 15th.
And on page 14, I'm sure I've bored you enough with all this. On page 14 is just a summary to let you know that we already do have open enrollment meetings set for the Warren County employees, and these are just the dates and the times. They will be, I think, put in payroll, and we will be mailing the retiree ones out that are under 65, and I think it's going to be in payroll this Friday. So.
Thank you. Jane?
I apologize, I came in late, so I didn't get this whole thing, but I got a question. In the process of signing for the town of Lake Laverne, the HCP, they have 4 different plans now, a single, a double, a family, and a single family.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the single family, either a wife with a couple of kids, or a husband and a couple of kids. In my town, I have 2 cases like that, and the family plan went from 18,000 down to 12 for a single family, one parent, one adult. They just dropped my copay down $5 for everything, and our contract is $2,000 less than over the budget.
Yeah, we run that every year. That's just the tier, they call it, the tier structure, whether it's individuals, 2-persons, families, husband, wife, parent, child. They have a million options. We run that every year to make sure, based on, but the problem is that spikes up the family rate if you have more than the 4, or more than the 3, I should say. So with the county, with how many family plans are on there, it actually would increase our budget.
Well, my town, it's decreased.
Yeah. A lot of our smaller, in our smaller towns, same thing, just because you have a lot of people that are maybe 2-person or a parent-child, but yeah, when you have a lot of families, that it unfortunately doesn't work out. We do run that every year.
In a lot of our smaller groups, we do the same thing, we have those tiers. We look at it, we see where their personnel is, are they individual, single, married, whatever they are, and then we run the budget based on that, and we run it by a 3-tier, 4-tier, 5-tier, run it and see which one fits the budget better, and then that's what we go with. And that could change every year to make you get married, to make you get divorced, so we run it every year to make sure if we need to put another tier in or leave it the way it is.
Any other questions?
Paul, do you have any comments, or?
Mr. Chairman, the first comment is I think Capital Financial is doing a great job in terms of setting us up to enjoy these stable rates that I think fairly stable rates that we'll be seeing over the next few years. So I really want to compliment them because they have not only, I think, brought us to this point, but the other thing is they are great to work with. They have certainly been very responsive. As far as I know, there's absolutely no complaints in the type of service they provide to our employees. So I think that's a first important point. The second thing is, though, as was mentioned, it would be necessary, if the committee is in favor of this, to allow the chairman to go ahead and sign the contract even before the board meeting. So we, need to know if the supervisors here will support that. I think there's a good number of supervisors here. The other piece of this, however, is that we will have to communicate with our unions about this Medicare Advantage change. I don't anticipate that they would see a problem, but we have a very short window, so what we would propose to do is, if the committee approves this, is go ahead and immediately share this with the unions today, and obviously just make sure they don't see a problem that we haven't seen. If they see a problem, then we're going to have a really quick meeting again. But our union contract says substantially or similar, so I think this matches up with the terms of the contract, so I don't anticipate a problem. and I was just talking to Martin on the side, he can cover the PBA, because the PBA, as you know, is kind of in a different situation than the other unions. But if Martin will handle the PBA and talk to them about it, I'll handle the Alliance and the CSEA, approach them and make sure they're on board. And traditionally, they haven't had a problem with these types of things. They understand the language of the contract, but here again, they do have a right to know about it and obviously have a say about it.
Any other comments? I'd also echo Paul's comments with regard to Capital Financial. You know, I feel really comfortable having our insurance plan in their hands. Having been in the insurance business, I can tell you that there's a lot of people out there that the first thing they do after they get your signature on the contract is start calculating the commission. And I think the first thing that Capital Financial does is start planning for the next year, and they've done a great job in keeping our rates stable. So with that, would someone like to move a resolution to approve the plan as presented, giving the chairman the authority to sign the contract? Dan, seconded by Bill. Any further discussion?
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, attempt to fill the position form, Paul, vacant position form. Want to review that?
Mr. Chairman, can we put that over till the next month? We had some problems in trying to add a couple of things that would kind of make the document flow, so if I could just have another month to get that done.
Okay, great. Item number 4 is vacancies filled. If there's no questions on that, we'll just move over it. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay. Pending item. Martin, would you discuss the proposed Warren County ethics law?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. At last month's meeting, I handed out a new proposed draft of our ethics law. I think I made 10 additional copies this morning, if any of the supervisors would need them for this morning, or anyone else for that matter. What I'll do is maybe I'll just place them here in case anybody needs an additional copy. The Ethics Code revisions that I proposed were brought out last spring. We actually went to a public hearing on that. It is a local law, and therefore there was a public hearing involved. It did not, it was essentially tabled. I think that there were a number of specific concerns and criticisms that were raised, but in the overall, I think the message that was given by the supervisors was that that draft was a bit too cumbersome, lengthy, and perhaps overbroad. What I have done here is a much leaner, shorter version of an ethics and disclosure law. It's streamlined, but it does include what I believe to be the essential provisions of what's needed in an ethics code, as required by Article 18 of the General Municipal Law. This would constitute a whole-scale replacement of our Code of Ethics, which was adopted on December 14 of 1990. So we have not had any revisions to our Code of Ethics in some 24 years. Again, it is a local law, meaning that the Board of Supervisors will need to conduct a public hearing and can only approve this following a public hearing should you decide to approve it at all. The draft that's before you is the state model. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that this draft was essentially prepared by attorneys at the Office of the State Controller. It is available on the State Controller's website. I had a conversation with one of those attorneys, and I think that this is a interesting way to be able to do this, because it is essentially the State Controller saying if you adopt this, you are in compliance with Article 18 of the General Municipal Law. Now, having said that, I did tailor it and modify it for purposes of it becoming a particular to Warren County, and I've made a number of changes to the model. There are a couple of important provisions in Article 18 of the General Municipal Law that I think I wanted to mention for your consideration when we're considering an ethics code. Section 806 of the General Municipal Law, again in Article 18, says that a code of ethics shall provide standards for officers and employees with respect to disclosure of interest in legislation before the local governing body, holding of investments in conflict with official duties, private employment in conflict with official duties, future employment, and such other standards relating to the conduct of officers and employees as may be deemed advisable. Such codes may regulate or prescribe conduct which is not expressly prohibited, but may not authorize conduct which is otherwise prohibited. Such codes may provide for the prohibition of conduct or disclosure of information and the classification of employees or officers. The Code of Ethics, as drafted, addresses all of those particular items. Section 808 of the Code of this General Municipal Law concerns Board of Ethics. In this draft, we will be establishing a Board of Ethics. We haven't really had that before. In this draft, consistent with Section 808, our Board of Ethics will consist of 3 members. We have to have at least 3 members on a Board of Ethics. 2 of those members cannot be employees or officials of Warren County. One of them must be. The appointing authority, that's you appoint the members of the Board of Ethics. And you'll recall last time when I made a presentation to you, I had before you an entire set of rules and regulations for the Board of Ethics to go along with the local law. I've scrapped that idea. Here in this code, what I've done is I've said the Board of Ethics may establish such rules and regulations as they deem appropriate to conduct their business. Now, should you go forward with this, and should there be a Board of Ethics appointed, what I would envision doing is meeting with those individuals and saying, hey, here is a set of rules and regulations that I drafted. You may want to consider this for purposes of conducting your business. But Section 808 says, the members of such Board of Ethics shall be appointed by the governing body. That's you. Such Board of Ethics shall consist of at least 3 members, a majority of whom shall not be officers or employees of such county or municipality, wholly or partially located in such county, and at least one of whom shall be an elected or appointed officer or an employee of the county. Again, you, the Board of Supervisors, decide who will be appointed to that Board of Ethics. You could decide that you want to have more than 3 on a Board of Ethics, but I've sort of made the initial determination, and I was speaking to the chairman about this morning. Let's start with 3, and let's see how it goes. Let's see how this goes for a couple of years, and I'll report back to you. We don't get, thankfully, mercifully, we don't get a lot of these types of complaints, but let's see how the Board of Ethics functions as 3 over the course of the next couple of years. And if we decide we need to increase that number, we can increase the number. If we decide it's working fine, it's working fine. The Board of Ethics will have the ability to consult with my offices and use my offices. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think if there's a problem, I think either myself or the Board of Ethics would come to you and say, we think that there should be some type of outside counsel available to provide us with assistance. But I don't envision that being a problem. We will continue to use the same ethics disclosure form that we've used for years. Supervisor Monroe at the public hearing made the point, and it was a good one. Hey, this is a good form. Why are we changing it? Well, I don't think we need to change it, and I think we can continue to use that very same ethics and disclosure form. That's incorporated into the local law. There's a new form, that's Exhibit B, by the way. There's a new form, Exhibit C, which is an outside interest form. And there's a provision in the local law which governs outside interests. Remember, Section 806 of the General Municipal Law says if you're going to adopt one of these things, you've got to have provisions in there about outside employment and outside interests. So Section 11 concerns private employment in conflict with official duties. One of those things that's new, again, completely new direction for the county. 11B, outside interest form. Any Warren County officer or employee or immediate family member is currently or plans to be in the future an employee, board member, consultant, owner, contractor, or even a passive investor of an entity that engages in any business or maintains any relationship with Warren County, provides to or receives from Warren County any client referrals, or competes with Warren County. They must fill out an outside interest form in the office of the Warren County Attorney. And that form is again, Appendix C. Just a brief point on that. I still feel that this office, my office, should be the office that sends out the forms and receives and maintains the forms. We're equipped to do that. We're maintained to do that. We're experienced in doing that. And I know that there may have been some concerns raised last time that maybe we shouldn't do that. Not by any of the supervisors raised that concern, but I would suggest that it's worked well and we continue to do that. So again, outside interest forms would be new, and those would have to be disclosed. What is an ethics code? The ethics code is generated by interests, financial interest or material benefit interests. That's it. If you have a financial interest or a material benefit can accrue or inure to you, you have to make a disclosure with respect to action that may be pending before the Board of Supervisors. It is in every interest. It's defined as financial or material benefit. That is defined in the word interest in Section 3C. It means a direct or indirect financial or material benefit, but does not include any benefit arising from the provision or receipt of any services generally available to the residents or taxpayers of the municipality, or a lawful class of such residents or taxpayers. A municipal officer or employee is deemed to have an interest in any private organization when he or she, his or her spouse, or member of his or her household is an owner, partner, member, director, officer, employee, or directly or indirectly owns or controls more than 5% of the organization's outstanding stock. It's the disclosure that's the key here. The disclosure is the way that this law would fundamentally work. It's not that you can't have an outside interest. It's not that you can't sit on a board. It's not that you can't do these things. But you have to disclose that you have done them or intend to do them. And, importantly, you can't disclose confidential information in your capacity as with your outside interest. So that's key here. Key to the success of the code would be that you cannot disclose confidential information. I think that's just common sense. 806 requires that if we're going to have this type of code, we've got to have a provision to that effect, so I put it in there. Annual disclosures would continue to be made, again, same form. We're going to make those disclosures by March 31st of each year. Generally speaking, there has not been a problem with that. We get our forms out on a timely basis about the beginning of the year. Folks fill out the forms, and they come in, and we maintain them. There is a list of officials, just like with your current code, of who is subject to this ethics code. Now, I've purposely put in here that that list is not exhaustive. I've modified the list slightly to include some new departments and new department heads and officials that weren't on the list in 1990. I've taken some out that no longer are positions here in 2014. But what I purposely said is that this is an illustrative list of those who have to file an annual disclosure statement, but it's not exhaustive. Why did I do that? Because each and every time that we may want to add someone to the list, I didn't want to have to go back and modify this local law. So essentially my office, and I think it's the right office, will be making the determination as to whether or not someone has to file an annual disclosure form. I suppose that could also be something that the Board of Ethics could do as an advisory opinion. There would continue to be the prohibition on gifts, which is consistent with Section 805A1A of the General Municipal Law. That has been around for a long time. The code goes into quite considerable detail as to what is a gift and what isn't a gift. Essentially, no Warren County officer or employee may accept or receive any gift or multiple gifts from the same donor having an annual aggregate value of $75 or more. It's sort of presumed that when someone attempts to give you a gift, it's intended to try to influence you. That's presumed in the law. That is here in the code as well. The Board of Ethics will essentially be asked to provide advisory opinions. They're not the end-all, they're not the final say. As I was saying to the chairman this morning, a Board of Ethics will review information and will issue an opinion. The opinion is not necessarily controlling or directive. What I envision a Board of Ethics to do, in my view, is a Board of Ethics reviews an ethics complaint, takes into consideration all the information, they can hold hearings, whatever they need to do, but then they issue an opinion as to what the outcome is or what they recommend. I don't believe that the Board of Ethics will have any particular enforcement power here. I believe ultimately, as I understood the direction from the board last time, it was the Board of Supervisors that wanted to be able to, kind of have be able to review things here independently of the Board of Ethics. There's nothing here in this law which would say that you can't do that. So the way that this is structured and consistent with the state model is that the Board of Ethics is in an advisory capacity. And Mr. Chairman, I think I've covered the essential points that I wanted to cover this morning. If there's any questions, I can certainly answer them. If they want to be asked at this time, we can have some further discussion. But the next step, when the committee is ready, in my view, is to move this forward to the Board of Supervisors for the scheduling of a public hearing.
Okay, any questions, discussion? Fred?
Got one. The disclosure that's filed in your office, what happens to it after it's filed?
It's filed. We maintain, it's sealed. There are opinions by Bob Freeman that they are subject to disclosure under FOIL, just so you know. But they are sealed. They're maintained in our office. We maintain them for a number of years, and then I think they're handled through our archival records retention process. But they're there. We have cabinets dedicated directly for that purpose.
And then the disclosure of outside interest, that satisfies that requirement to file that disclosure?
Yeah. What's going to happen under this law is, Fred, is the disclosure of outside interest would go to Joan. Under this law, it would be filed with Joan, but ultimately would make its way to my office for record keeping.
John?
Two things. One is, and both related to the Board of Ethics itself. The first question is that, that board, whether it be 3 members or more, have at least one member who is an appointed or employee or appointed officer and so forth. I mean, is that optional? Because some views of that is that it's a conflict of interest. You have the board who is reviewing potential conflicts of interest and so forth of employees and elected members, and to have such an individual on that board almost appears to be a conflict of interest. So some communities have opted out of that. So is that a legal option, one way or another, for this board to consider?
As I view the law, I don't believe so. And I've also, again, followed the state model on this. The state model on this includes that one person who is an individual who is either an appointed or an elected official within the county. My suggestion, John, again, is this is new territory for us, and my suggestion is that we enact this. We're very careful about who the appointed or elected official would be. There's going to be deliberation on that, and we see how this goes for a couple of years. And if it's a problem, if we think it's a concern, people are going to talk about it, and we'll have further debate on it. But again, I want to emphasize that I've heard those discussions. I'm aware of the differing opinions on that. I tend to take the position that I'd like to just look at that from a safe educational distance. I wanna recommend to you that you follow the state code here at Warren County, which is the state code that they've prepared, and I think we see how it works.
Part B, still on the Board of Ethics. Some counties have prohibited that members of the Board of Ethics, cannot be, I should say, current members of a political committee. Because what has happened in the past, and I'm sure whether it's Democrat or Republican, who gets appointed are members of the political committee who also decides and votes on who's going to get endorsed and who's not, and so forth. And so there's a control aspect. So in many, I believe Saratoga County and others too, but I'm going from memory, have prohibited that members of the Board of Ethics be also members of a local political committee, be it Democrat, Republican, what have you.
I'm aware of that as well. I think there was language to that effect in the original draft that I put forward last spring. My thought on that, again, is that you're going to have the ability as the board to decide who is going to be on this board and who's not going to be on this board. If that is a factor that you want to ask someone, are you thinking of appointing them to the board? Are you a member of a political party? Yes. Are you an officer in that political party? Yes. What are your functions as an officer in that political party? Yes. Do you think as a result of your answer to these questions that you can be a fair and impartial member of a board of ethics? Or do you think that there will be any political influence that you may bring to the table as a result of your party affiliation and your official duties within that party? And have a frank discussion with them. I'd like to think that this board can have those discussions, and I'd like to think that through those discussions, we can have the best people appointed to this board.
Well, I'd also like some assurance that that event, even after the vetting that you just offered, would never take place. And one way to assure it is to put it in your code of ethics.
Bill?
I agree with John. I don't think a member of a political committee should be appointed to the Board of Ethics.
I as well.
Okay. All right, any other comments?
If we wanna make that part of this, do you need a resolution from this committee to?
I can include that. It's very easy. If that's the directive that the committee wants to take, I can include that. It's very easy to include. I can just go back to some of the original language that I'm aware of, and include that in the Board of Ethics provision, and have that change available. I don't see it as a reason not to move forward, if that's what your directive is. And the other thing too is that you're going to get a draft of this before the actual public hearing. If we want to make any minor modifications to the language through the public hearing, I think we would have the authority to do that.
I guess my question would be, if we were to include that in the law, are we saying that only an independent could serve on this?
No. I think it can be a member of a party. I think the concern is that you can't be sort of an official within that party. You can't be a local official within that party.
Can't be a committeeman on the party.
Right.
Okay,
I'd move it with that change.
okay. Second? All right, I guess then, we'll ask for a resolution, including that change, to move this to the full board, for schedule of a public hearing. Does that make sense? You agree with that?
I agree with that.
And who was the second on that? Dennis? Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other business? Motion to adjourn. Matt?
Good change, Dennis, because I don't
Matt.
have to worry about being on there. That's right. I'm on the committee.